What's the difference between the Queen and Crown? The Queen is an old lady living in a big house, whilst the Crown is a ruling state, a global power, a bank. Much like the Vatican, except instead of hoarding the secret treasures of the world, the Crown owns 1/6 of Earth's land and sea. It's a vast property portfolio like no other, filled with verdant forests and lakes, fertile earth and clean water, fishing, mining and oil rights. Past headlines still perpetuate the myth that the Queen is the world's landlady, but the media knows better. Britain's ad hoc democracy remains somewhat vague, and aside the Magna Carta, it offers little protection for its citizens. The UK has a puppet monarchy and a highly undemocratic second chamber of parliament. Over many centuries, the House of Lords remained a political stronghold for the Blue Bloods, but these days it's mostly populated by ex-cabinet members and Quango cronies. A purely procedural aspect of British democracy has been hijacked by the monarchy. The legal quagmire has been discussed several times in Parliament and regarded as having the makings of a constitutional crisis. Unlike many countries, Britain has never come close to a real revolution. We never had our Independence Day. Even now, the population of Britain, in all but name, remains subjects of the Queen and Crown. If the Crown was ever to collect back rent on its property, there'd be all-out war. Not that Britain has any real military power. It can hardly defend itself, let alone afford another conflict. There are even Russian subs taking regular jaunts around British waters, and nobody bats an eyelid. War is definitely not on the cards, but a coup d'etat, an unconstitutional seizure of power, that's not so far-fetched. You may be asking yourself, what the hell has this all got to do with me? Well, if you reside in an English-speaking country, you're likely in the same boat as the rest of us. The Crown's political and economic reach stretches far and wide, and for many it owns the land beneath our feet. Let's take a look into the future and see what it might hold. When the Queen dies, the responsibility of the Crown and its empire must be handed down to the next in line. When Prince Charles takes over, despite calls for him to give way to William, there'll be a media blitz campaign. The propaganda will pave the way for sweeping changes. The royal family will be rebranded as a caring, sharing, progressive institution. In the meantime, the real business of the day will be conducted behind closed doors. Remember, that's 1/6 of the world's land rights, including Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and a whole host of other countries, islands, and even the seas, currently owned by the Crown. The Great Reset means the end to all true sovereignty and democratic union. As the world is sliced and diced into economic regions, there'll be no place for antiquated ideas like history, tradition, or even individual autonomy. If the political tide turns and stokes the fires of discontent, the public will soon begin to doubt the whole idea of the monarchy. Finally, the corporate elite can make their play for power, usurping the old order and the shadow state of the Crown. Offered enough cold hard cash and intimidated by political and economic threats, the Crown will sell up and the media will hail it as a historic day for democracy and freedom. The Queen is racking up the years and veering close to a century. She's physically too weak to wear her ceremonial garb. The crown weighs heavy on her head, and so she's resorted to wearing a tiara. Symbolically, such actions represent a handover of power, not that many have noticed. The more frail the monarch becomes, the less media attention she gets. So little in fact, that even the fringes of mainstream news randomly speculate on her impending death. However, before Charles has a chance to flex his constitutional muscle, the deal would have already been made. In truth, the crown will be nothing more than a facade, a mere shadow of its formal self, a regional authority in a vast corporate empire, owned by a small consortium of incredibly wealthy investors. Meet the new landlords. Blackrock and Vanguard are the two largest asset management firms in the world. They own over 1,600 major American firms. In addition to the New York Times, Blackrock and Vanguard are also majority shareholders of Time Warner, Comcast, Disney, and News Corp, which together control more than 90% of the US media. Apple, Facebook, Microsoft are all heavily subsidized by major investors, and at the top of the pile are Blackrock and Vanguard. Same goes for the food sector, much like Big Pharma and healthcare. In fact, they own so much, it's created a global monopoly, where all the major corporations in the world own a slice of each other. Vanguard is even the largest shareholder of Blackrock, but the financial background of Vanguard takes a little more digging. It turns out that Vanguard's majority shareholder is a company called Ant, a fintech corporation and former subsidiary of Alibaba. Ant was recently placed under the scrutiny of the Chinese government. The company reclassified itself and now it's classed as a financial holding company, which essentially means there'll be a new landlord. Ant will be crowned as the new king of 1/6 of the world. The UN quickly scuttled a recent global campaign. It proposed that the people of the world will be happier if they own nothing. No car, no home, no money. I thought I'd mention that before explaining the Chinese symbolic meaning of the ant. The Chinese identify the ant as the righteous insect and attribute orderliness, virtue, and patriotism to it. But an alternate symbolism is subordination, especially that of the tireless and dutiful servant. And when 1/6 of the world changes hands and the new owners are given the keys, the media will remain silent. The deal of the century will be conducted behind closed doors, and the world will be none the wiser.